Hey everybody, it's me. Ooh, it's been quite a couple of, oops, I don't know why I said couple. It's literally only been, no, it's been quite a couple of days. Yesterday was intense. Today was intense. It's been intense. Um, sorry for any noises. I don't know what I've done with my mic, but my mic is suddenly super sensitive, like a lot more sensitive than it used to be. Um, I did nothing to the settings, so I'm gonna have to figure that out later. um, wow. Yeah, so let me just hold on one second. There we go. Just gonna turn this guy off. There we go. All right, so yeah, wow, it has been a it's been a couple of interesting days. Last night, the documentary, I stayed up and I watched it a couple of times. The first showing and then the second showing that came on about an hour after the first one. It was really, 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 really intense. First of all, just like I expected, the factual uh, the factual information was 100% accurate. It was very well done. So, like, fantastic job to everybody that worked on the documentary. I knew it was going to come out great. I mean, at least I was very sure because the experience that I had with everybody was yeah. um, I knew from working with them that they had done very extensive research. I figured that they would have done a great job. I figured as much because they were very rigorous in fact checking with me. And somebody had actually asked on Reddit, or was wondering on Reddit earlier today, whether the people who were, whose identities were kind of disguised a bit on the documentary, if they had much say in how they were being disguised, because they were concerned for the people that they weren't disguised well enough. Uh, Speaking from personal experience with the way that they worked with me on my part, I can pretty much guarantee you that they asked the people that they were working with, what was okay, what they were comfortable with, um, and whether or not. Hold on, let me just. I hope I'm not being too loud. There we go. Whether or not things were okay with them, I feel like, because they asked me, every step of the way. They even asked me about statements that I had made in my part of the documentary. Like, they were asking me about one phrase that I said in there, which was that my family means business. Like, I knew my family meant business because they were willing to kill each other over it. Speaking about the religion, the cult. They asked me, they made sure to check with me first, like, are you okay with us including that line? Because it's a pretty intense line. And I was like, yeah, I said it. It's true. Put it in there. Go for it. And and they asked me, like, if it was all right, if I felt comfortable with showing certain people's faces in pictures that I provided them. And yeah, I was like, uh, we had discussions about it. Like, I wasn't immediately like, yeah, screw my family or whatever. Um, no, we had discussions about it, and they were very accommodating and very sensitive, and they told me that whatever I felt was best, they would go along with. Um, and they were more than happy to blur whoever, like, even just specific people if that's what I wanted, or what my family even wanted. Like, they told me, you're welcome to consult with your family if they'll even talk to you. or we'll just go by what you feel comfortable with or what you think is best. So yeah, they were really looking out for us. So to anybody who is wondering, if those people had any say in how they were disguised or to what extent their identities were concealed, yes, I can say with some certainty that they absolutely must have been, because they were very careful with how everything went on my end of things. So I can only imagine they were even more careful with the people who wanted their identities concealed. And that goes for like pictures and everything that they posted. Or that they shared with the documentary, I mean. So yeah, the documentary was so well done. So well done. I'm so immensely proud of everybody who participated in it. I have like the utmost respect for everybody who shared their stories, especially the particularly difficult ones, to even talk about. Like it's hard enough to talk about that kind of stuff, just in privacy, with people who care about you, and people who are professionals like doctors and everything. Like making yourself vulnerable like that in front of the whole country, pretty much, is just, and of course, people outside the country, because people outside the country are watching this as well. I have a lot of respect and admiration for people who are able to do that. It's it can't have been easy. So I thank them for doing that, for coming forward with all of that, even though it was undoubtedly painful to think about, much less vocalize, to so many people, to put themselves out there like that. It's scary. It's not just painful, it's also probably scary. I'm sure that, because I know that at least one participant, actually, no, two participants, the people that they were talking about, who hurt them, are still alive and still out there. So that's got to be terrifying. So yeah, much respect, to everybody involved, and those sharing their stories, and those who are whistleblowers, who are, out there putting that stuff out there, making it available to people, helping to keep everybody informed, and make huge progress in taking down the cult, and of course, inoculating the public against them. So, huge thanks, huge respect, and of course compassion, because a lot of what they were talking about was relatable. I only a small part of my story, and even a small part of my mother's story, was actually in the documentary. There's stuff that I haven't talked about on anywhere, actually. Only to friends in private, and a very small amount of those friends at that have I talked to you about some of the things, some of my own experiences, and perhaps I will sometime. But if you've been watching me on here for a while, or even just in the past few days, you'll know that what was on the documentary was not the entire story with my mother. She suffered not just from the blood doctrine, but she had everything. She had to go through everything that Watchtower has to offer. Like every bad thing that Watchtower has to offer, she went through. She was a victim of child sexual abuse, by a stepfather. She was a child bride. She was shunned. She suffered physical abuse. And yeah, she, I mean, she ultimately met her end because of the blood doctrine. So yeah, my mother went through everything that you can go through as a Jehovah's Witness. And still, I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe for a second that my mother actually, you know, I don't know. I just don't believe that she was fully mentally in. You know, whether or not she would have said yes, that's one thing. I don't believe, or sorry, no to the blood. That's a whole different subject. Because you can only be partially mentally in and still feel like the pull of the indoctrination to to appease them and do something like that. It dies hard. It really does. For some people, especially when your entire family is in it. So I can't say for sure that she would have, ultimately, if she had been like, in her right mind and everything, and mentally okay, not just from a psychological standpoint, but from a physiological standpoint. I can't talk today. If she had been okay from a physiological and psychological standpoint, I can't say 100% that she would have taken the blood, but I do know that she did say yes to blood initially. I have proof of that in the medical documents. It's just that after a few days of being in the hospital, she deteriorated very quickly, both from a psychological and physiological standpoint, because she was off of her very necessary paranoid schizophrenia medication. It's called Geodon. And so she was hallucinating and having, delusions and everything. And not only that, but her brain, her cognitive abilities were affected by brain swelling as well. So she was in no position at that point to consent, unfortunately. Which is how she landed in the situation of my grandmother being the one to give the consent. So, yeah, I mean, I can't say, because I can't read my mom's mind, I can't say for 100% certainty that she would have said yes, ultimately, and, if she were 100% mentally clear and everything, mentally functioning. But I do know that she did say yes in the beginning, to blood, and I do know that she told me that it was okay, before she had died, like, I want to say a year or so, even maybe further back, she said it was okay that, that I didn't fully believe what was being taught by the witnesses, and that I had serious doubts, and that I had lots of questions. She said that was fine, and that I shouldn't just blindly believe things that I'm taught or told, and that it's good to question things. It's good to think for yourself, and that she was glad I could talk to her about that. She was really, really happy that I was able to express those things to her. So, yeah, I don't believe my mother was fully mentally in. And I know that she wasn't a practicing witness at all at the time of her death. It had been a while. Ex-JWs Smithy says, during the crash in the Kingdom Hall, I noticed the elders were saying it was your mother's choice. I find it hard to believe that when the organization dominates one another to all sorts of injury. Yes, the organization definitely, they pressure you with undue influence to go against self-preservation. It's that powerful. So, like, even if people do say, no, I don't want to take blood, I still have a hard time believing that they would do that without any influence, without any outside influence, pushing them to that choice. Because it's really hard. Like, when you have your whole family as Jehovah's Witnesses, and you have, your whole support system are Jehovah's Witnesses, your whole world are Jehovah's Witnesses, it's really hard. And this is from a psychological standpoint. Like, there have been studies on this kind of thing. It's really hard to go against, what the majority in your circle are saying. There was a study done where they showed, they had people, a group of people, and they were showing them, I can't remember what exactly the situation was, but they were like showing them some information. No, not information. They were showing them a picture. They were asking them to identify certain information about the picture, and they planted one person in there who wasn't like just an average person off the street, wasn't part of the study. It was the control person, right? And nobody else knew that that person was a plant. So like they had the people look at some stuff. Oh no, wait. I think they had a few plants. But yeah, they had them look at some stuff, and they were telling them to like, identify certain things about it. And the plants were saying, saying the wrong information, even though it was very blatantly, clearly, I think it was like, which line is longer? I think that's what they were doing. And they had the plant say that one is the longer one, even though it was very obviously not. Like, visibly it was obvious. And because of that, and I think, I don't know, I feel like I remember there was more than one plant. Because there were people in agreement about the wrong information, the majority of the rest of the experimental group, the test group, agreed with the wrong information. That's the kind of situation we're dealing with here. It's scientific fact that people will go against, like, literally, like, their eyes betray them. I mean, they feel like their eyes betray them. Like, they will literally go against what they can actually see in front of them. And we know that because Jehovah's Witnesses, they see evidence, like on the news, in the newspaper, on websites, even in their own congregations. They see these things happen in front of them, and they will still believe otherwise, even though they can see it, even though they may even know about it, like, even though it may even happen to them. Like, that's another thing. There are people who are victims that are still very, brainwashed or unduly influenced, and they still will be like, nope, they'll be in denial. They'll be like, no, this is still the truth. This is still the truth. That thing that happened, it's because of Satan, and it has nothing to do with the organization. Every organization has bad people in it, and, unfortunately, Jehovah's organization is not immune to this. They'll do whatever they can to reason with themselves out of this cognitive dissonance. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with here. The human mind is a powerful thing. Dave says, oh, and by the way, hi Dave and hi Jay. We used to call it positive peer pressure in the Kingdom Hall. Coercive arm-twisting influence with comply or die mental tacticians from the POCBOE, HLC Helders running the show locally. Yeah, a lot of people, I remember that people used to call it positive peer pressure. And, I just shudder to think, like, that people do this and they think it's okay. And, I can't blame them. Like I said, I can't blame some of them. There are some people who know exactly what they're doing. There are. You can't make it to being an elder without realizing, that you're covering some stuff up, without realizing that there is definitely some stuff going on that's wrong. You know. Now, whether or not you feel like you can do anything about it, that's a whole other story. But you definitely know. I remember we had a talk every January with a renewal and update of the No Blood card. And then in the late 90s / early 2000s, the legal department created a strong-arm, durable power of attorney. Wow. Yeah. I remember, in the early 2000s, that happened. My mother died in 2004, So that was the early 2000s. Yeah. I feel like I recall when we were at her bedside in the hospital that there was mention of fractions. I think maybe even like some of the other Jehovah's Witnesses that were there visiting, not the hospital liaison committee, but just other Jehovah's Witnesses that my mother had known in Florida. My grandmother contacted them, and we were actually staying with them while we were there. Great choice, right? Just staying with more people that are going to pressure you. I think they were mentioning to her the thing about the fractions, and I think they mentioned it in like a kind of like a well. Okie doke. That was odd. I don't know what just happened. I don't even know if I'm still on. I have to check. 1 second. I think I'm still on. Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that. I don't know what just happened. My internet just had an explosion. That never really happens, but okay. Anyway. Yeah, I already forgot what I was talking about. So that's great. Oh, right, the hospital liaison committee. So, yeah, it wasn't them, but it was other witnesses. I mean, the hospital liaison committee was there, but it was other witnesses that we were staying with that knew my mother that were suggesting, I think, trying to be compassionate. They were suggesting the fractions thing, and I think my grandmother may have considered it for like a second, but then she was like, no, no blood products. And it's even, again, it's in the documents from her hospital visit. I mean, that appears on the documentary. The documents that they show on screen, those are the actual documents from her final hospital visit. The original director, Jeff Fierzig, he took those, and he took my VHS tapes of home recordings and pictures and stuff with him when he went back to his. I think he went back to California. Yeah, he works in California and in New York. I think he went back to California when he did this. And yeah, he took all the stuff, he like scanned it all, he transferred the VHS stuff to digital files so that he could use it in the documentary. And yeah, he even scanned my mother's hospital records so that he could use them in the documentary. So yeah, that oops, sorry about that. So yeah, that stuff that you see on screen, that's legit. That's 100%. Like, it's hard. I kind of wish that they had, put it in quotes so that you could read it a little more easily. Overlaid that over the actual document. But yeah, if you look closely, if you like pause your screen or whatever and look closely, it says not to give her any blood products, even if she has to die. And that my grandmother said she would feel fine not giving her any products. And that I think my grandmother even said, so be it, if she dies. So yeah, that's, yeah. Sorry. It was really hard for me to watch everybody else's parts. Like, I cried during, the O'Donnell's parts. I cried during Cameron's parts. It was really rough. I felt for everybody. Like I said, because I can relate to the stuff that they were saying on a personal level. But when my stuff came on, I absolutely lost it. Floods and floods of tears, because, seeing my mother, I hadn't seen those VHS tapes in a while. I have a VCR still, but I don't, It's not like I have it hooked up and I'm not like popping VHSs in every day or anything like that. I just bust that out when I need to for like, special occasions, so to speak. But I hadn't seen those tapes in a long time. And seeing my mom like that was it was really hard. She was really young, and she was such a beautiful soul, full of life, very goofy, a very vibrant human being. And she was robbed of her life from beginning to end, nonstop. And it was just really hard to see her. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It was really hard to see her, like, just so alive and looking very happy and so young. Such a young person having to try and live an adult life already. In that video that they showed of her where I'm a baby still, she's only, I think she's only about 16 there. Because she had me at 15, and in that video I was probably about a year old. So yeah, that's a 16-year-old child that you're seeing in the documentary, dancing around, being silly, and just being a 16-year-old. My mother was a child. And she didn't even get to live a very long adult life before she was gone. She was only 32. So yeah, it was really hard seeing those videos. And my uncle, I gave him a call earlier today to see, what he thought of the documentary and how he was doing in general, because I know that this was going to be emotional for him too. And yeah, he said it was emotional for him. He got emotional. He really loved my mother. He was that's his sister. And everybody loved my mother. Everybody who met her, everybody who knew her, just everybody always fell in love with my mother. They love her. And my grandmother even used to tell me all the time that that was her favorite child. And that's that should say something, that a mother could do that to her favorite child. Somebody, like, of all the children, my grandma had 5 children. Of all of her 5 children, that my grandmother could just do that, could make that choice for her favorite daughter to die, and think that she's making the right choice. And you heard her in the documentary. She's in denial. She thinks that that would have been my mother's choice. She said she chose that. My mom did not choose that. My mom 100% did not choose that. That was my grandmother who made that choice, and that's in the documents I have. And it's in my memory, burned in there forever. So, but you can see what she says to me at the door. You can see from that she clearly thinks she made the right choice, and she's very happy with that, and she really thinks that she's going to see my mom again. And she even tried to use that, which I think is really disgusting. She tried to use that to lure me back in, telling me toward the end of our conversation that time is short and I can see my mother again because she will be resurrected. She was trying to get me to go back. They cut out the parts of the conversation I had with her where we talked about the fact that I'm trans, because I think it probably wasn't relevant, since when I came out to her on that, and I do have the original recording, I may upload it later. When I came out to her and told her I was trans, she told me that she had found out from another family member, and she already knew, and that she liked my name because it's from the Bible, and that that the elders told her to be nice to me and stuff, and that I might change back, and that I might come back to being a Jehovah's Witness. Sorry, Dave. I missed a bunch of your messages. How did your mother describe her relationship with your grandmother? I mean, my mother and my grandmother, um, you know, except for the times where my mother was being shunned, my mother and my grandmother were close. My grandmother loved my mother, and my mother loved my grandmother very much. Um, that's another reason this is so devastating. It's like it doesn't matter how close you are with your children and how much you love them and stuff. If you're that indoctrinated, you may do the unthinkable. Um, my mother. When I say my mother really loved my grandmother, I mean she really loved her. She would always be bringing her flowers for no reason. She would always be like, calling her up and seeing how she's doing, and she just absolutely loved her. And my grandmother really did love my mother, and she kind of has a history of doing harmful things while being well-meaning. For instance, and I'm not sure if I've ever told anybody this publicly before, but when my mother was in a rehab facility for her alcoholism, my grandmother visited her and actually snuck in vodka in a water bottle for my mom because my mom had begged her, please, please, and my grandmother, like I said, she caved and she brought her some while she snuck it in. That is very bad for a few reasons. One, that's like not allowed in the first place. And two, super dangerous. When you're in a rehab facility for alcoholism, I don't know if y'all know this, but you're usually on a lot of benzodiazepines to help you with the withdrawal symptoms. And if you mix alcohol and benzos, you can actually suppress your respiratory system so much that you stop breathing and die, or at the very least end up in a coma. So that is extraordinarily dangerous, and please, if anybody ever asks you to do that, please don't. For their own safety, don't do that. Because you could kill them. Well, I mean, they could kill themselves drinking that, but you could contribute to that. Please don't do that, no matter how much they beg you. Alcohol and benzos are a deadly combination. So yeah, like I said, my grandma has a history of doing things with a well-meaning intention that are absolutely detrimental and dangerous, including what ultimately led to my mother's death. So yeah, the documentary was difficult to watch, but very well done. A valuable piece of media exposing the Jehovah's Witness organization. And I am very honored to have participated in it. And I was texting with the producer, the executive producer, right after. Well, actually, it was like still in the last few minutes of the documentary airing last night. She actually contacted me and she said, "Are you watching?" And I said, "Yes." And I replied to her a little bit, like a few minutes later, something, because I had my phone off. I didn't want to be distracted. I said yes, and I sent her like a crying emoji face because I was crying a lot, and I told her, I told her that they did such a wonderful job and that they handled everything so sensitively, but that they handled it sensitively, but with maximum impact. And I fully believe that. Like, everything was done so well and so sensitively, but the impact was at its maximum. I think you cannot sit through this documentary and come away from it still thinking of the Jehovah's Witness organization as being completely innocuous. There's no way. I mean, objectively, with all those facts, combined with all of those personal experiences, I mean, it speaks for itself. It really does. She and I are the same age, born in 1972. My mom was actually born in 1971, so she's a little older than you. December of 1971. She had the coolest 80-ish haircuts in those videos and photos. Beautiful personality, beautiful smile, beautiful woman. Yes, my mother was very, very beautiful. Very enigmatic personality. And back in the 80s, people would always tell her she looked like Molly Ringwald. I think she wanted to look like Molly Ringwald. And she had all those, all that 80s Madonna kind of fashion going on too. She really loved Madonna, which is funny because I'm pretty sure Jehovah's Witnesses definitely did not approve of Madonna. Locally, there was a counselor here who snuck in some opioids to a fellow church member, and he got arrested for it. He was under the guise also of well intentions. Yeah, see, it's never good to to give people drugs or alcohol, that isn't meant for them. And you never know what else is in their system and what else, what harm you could be doing. So just don't, please. Especially if they're in a rehab facility, that's like the last thing they need. Jay says, it was truly shocking and misleading on those stupid elders who didn't care about the abuse Cameron Torres went through. No remorse nor compassion. They just told him to put it behind. Sickening. Yes, that really, really, really upset me. I mean, I've been told the same thing by elders. So I wasn't surprised, but I was really, really upset for him because of just, obviously, yeah. Poor guy, he went through so much crap, and he's still going through crap. It's not like he can just reach out and talk to his mom and have a normal relationship with her. And on top of that, he has to deal with, what happened to him. You don't just get over something like child abuse. You get through it, but not over it. And you don't really ever, when I say you don't get over it, it's never completely behind you. And I can say that from personal experience. It's never completely behind you. It's just something you have to get through in your life, continuously. There may be periods where it's not affecting you as much, and where you have the help of therapy to help you cope with it, but you just, it's never gone permanently. It becomes something that has taken a dent out of you a little bit. It does cause permanent damage. This is fascinating. Have you been able to get an idea of your grandmother and the relationship with her own mother? Wondering if you noticed any patterns down the generational line. I was fortunate enough to know my great-grandmother while she was alive. She lived to be 93, by the way. My grandmother herself is currently in her early 70s. My great-grandmother was... I don't really have much of an idea of my grandmother and her mother's relationship, but I know that my great-grandmother was pretty indoctrinated herself, and she was very strict with me anyway, because I would go over there sometimes and I would be babysat and just visit too, and she was pretty strict. I know from talking to my grandmother and other members of my family that when my grandmother got pregnant with my Uncle Reuben, the one that is supportive of me and the one that I spoke to earlier about the documentary, when she got pregnant with my Uncle Reuben, I believe it was at age 16, my great-grandmother wanted her to get married to the guy. I don't remember if they did. I want to say that they did not, but yeah, they wanted to have her married and have her live in a little house on their property or something, if I remember the story correctly. So yeah, the forced marriage thing is definitely a pattern. They really just, and the teen motherhood thing. it's, they really, it just seems like they care more about how everything looks than how it's affecting, the child. And I don't mean just the child who has to go through being a young parent, but also the child that results from the situation. I mean, I myself have spoken on that in the past, that my mother being a teen parent definitely had an effect on me. I mean, I'm not saying my mother didn't try her best, but because she was so, that she had gone through so much trauma herself and was mentally ill and also an alcoholic and was, using prescription drugs and even illegal ones at certain points, um, that affected me. My mother's trauma and things that she had to deal with herself, that she was vastly, you know, under under resourced to be able to prepare or to cope with, like, that had a massive effect on me. I had to grow up myself very early in life. When I last lived with my mother, which was when I was still living in Florida and I was 15 years old, that was the last time I was there. At that point, I was taking care of my two brothers. I was practically raising them for her, and it became too much for me. Because I was skipping first period of my freshman year of high school every single day just to make sure that my brothers got up, got breakfast, got dressed in clean clothes, and got a bath and everything. And I had to make sure they also got to school. I would walk them there myself, which is why I missed my first period. So, I that became too much for me. And I really loved and cared about my brothers. I actually did report what was going on in the house many times to Child Protective Services. And the annoying thing is that Child Protective Services, we actually did get put in a foster home once, but that was not because of a report that I made. That was because my mother passed out on the phone with my grandmother while she was very drunk once, and my grandmother called the police and had she called the police all the way from Texas to our house in Florida and had the paramedics break into our house, which scared the crap out of me because I was very sick and sleeping at the time that it happened and had no idea what the hell was going on. I came down the hall with a bat, walking to my mother's room because I heard the commotion. I was ready to kill somebody or beat the crap out of them because I thought there's somebody breaking in and hurting my mother. But it was the paramedics. They crawled through the window and they had to take her to the hospital because she was very close to death from alcohol poisoning. And because of that situation, we were taken to a foster home, and separate ones at that. So that was unfortunate. And I think I may have spoken about that experience before too. That was really horrible. Foster parents that we had were neglectful at best and abusive at worst. But I digress. When I did try to report things after that, because I did try to report things, well, there was one time that I was taken to a psych hospital for reporting what happened because they believed my mother when she told them that I was just upset because we had moved and that I was making stuff up about there being drugs in the house and everything. They warned my mother ahead of time. My mother and stepfather at the time, they warned them ahead of time before the police showed up. So they had a head start and were able to hide everything and get rid of everything so that the cops wouldn't see what was going on there. Yeah. So it just ended up making me look crazy. But no, it was true. And I think the counselor knew that I was telling the truth. My counselor at my school. I wish I could reach out to her. I've tried, finding her in the past to reach out to her. She was like the best counselor I had. She actually threw me a birthday party in her office at school. she knew that I was being raised in the Jehovah's Witnesses, but she knew from talking to me multiple times that, that I really wished I could celebrate my birthday with my friends. So she actually had all my friends called out of class under the guise of needing to have some kind of peer mediate or some kind of mediation between peers. And we had a birthday party. She brought treats and everything, and snacks, and she even bought a giant birthday card for me and had all my friends sign it. And she was just a really genuinely fantastic human being, and I miss her. But yeah, also when I tried to report things to Child Protective Services in high school, they did come. They came to the house. They opened an investigation, but they never looked throughout the house. My mom would clean up the living room before they were coming. There were never any unscheduled visits, so she always knew. She always cleaned up. She always, just the living room though. And they did require her to give them a piece of paper saying that she was attending Alcoholics Anonymous. But my mother would come to my room before they were going to show up, and she would tell me, sign a name on this paper. And it was her, her sheet that she was supposed to have the person running the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting sign as proof that she was attending. She would tell me, sign this piece of paper. It doesn't matter what name you use, just make up any name, and just sign whatever. So she would make me sign her AA paper to make it look like she was going to the meetings. I felt really wrong about it because I hate lying very, very much. But she made me do that, and she told me that if I didn't do that, that they would put me in another foster home and stuff. And I just said, yeah, I don't want to go through that again. But I wanted them to do something. I wanted them to help us, not put us in a foster home necessarily, but at least let us go with our other parents, or me back to my grandma, or just help my mom, just help her get some help. But they didn't do that. They would just come over, they would look at her sheet, they would take her at her word, and they never talked to us, like after that initial time that they did. They wouldn't talk to us when they would come and visit. We would just kind of sit there and exist and look, we're alive. That's about it. They would talk to my mother, and she would charm the pants off of them and tell them that, yeah, no, everything's going great, blah, 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 we're about to have dinner and everything, and, just act like everything's cool. Also worth mentioning, when we were in the foster home, it was my testimony at age 12 that got the judge to release us back to our mother. My grandma and my mom met with me, in a separate private room before I was supposed to testify at court, and they told me, if you want to get out of that foster home that you're in, and you want to save your brothers from that bad foster home that they're in, because they were in an awful foster home, then you need to tell the judge that everything's fine, that you all go to church, and that this was just a one-time mistake that your mother made, and that she's a good mother and all that stuff. And I did that, because I thought I was trying to rescue my brothers out of a bad situation, and myself as well, because like I said, foster home was terrible for both of us, or for all of us, my two brothers and theirs, and me and mine. So I did it. I was kind of dishonest to the judge and told them all that stuff I just said, and the judge told me that because I was very well-spoken and intelligent and everything for a 12-year-old, that he believed me, and that he felt comfortable sending us back to our parents. So yeah, even when I tried to get Child Protective Services involved, or even when the state was involved trying to help us, so to speak, we didn't really get the help that we needed. We were failed. And I was only 12. I struggled to try to forgive myself for these things, but I was a kid, and it was really hard for me back then to advocate for myself, but I did try. But, yeah. Anyway, yeah, back to the documentary. Everything was really, really intense, very factual, but I knew that it would be factual because they were very rigorous in fact-checking. It was so well done. The editing was great. The camera work was great. All of the clips that they used, everything went together very well. And I was just thoroughly impressed. Like 100%. You know, it was more than I could have asked for, really. Really. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to watch everybody else's stuff and my own. It was hard to see myself as a child and know what I was going through at those times. It was hard. And that hug that I did when I hugged my grandmother at the door, and I asked her for a hug, that was genuine. I really wanted a hug from my grandmother. That woman raised me for the majority of my childhood. I really do love my grandmother, even still. Even with what happened, I still love her, and I do care about her. And as much as it might not seem like that because I put her on blast, so to speak, in this documentary, you know, I really do love her and care about her. I don't want to hurt her. And I'm really glad that the documentary didn't make her look evil. You know, they weren't like demonizing her. They just made her seem to be very brainwashed and very, you know, under the influence of the cult, which that is the truth. I don't think my grandmother is an evil person. I just think that she succumbed to the influence of the cult and did some things that, you know, that were awful. But I don't believe that she as a person is necessarily evil. I don't believe that all of us necessarily as human beings amount to our actions. You know, because then if we were, you know, were our actions, then a lot of us would, you know, at least at certain points in our life, be terrible people. You know, I mean, I know that I don't have super proud. There are certain points in my life where I'm not very proud of what I've done. You know, like, for instance, you know, people have been criticizing me on the video I uploaded of the protest from the documentary, the footage that I put up of the full thing. They've been criticizing me. I was called a thug, actually, which kind of made me chuckle because I think of a thug as, you know, the people in the suits that were violently dragging me out of there. But yeah, people have been criticizing me, and you know, I'm fine with being criticized, and I'm fine with dissenting viewpoints and everything. I mean, hell, I will agree that there was one time that I did a protest at a cart where I talked to witnesses that I do feel I was a little too much, you know, and I do regret that. I wish that I had handled myself differently, and that was when Rick from Excelsior was visiting, and you know, all the way from England, and we went downtown here in San Antonio and we talked to people at a cart, and you know, it started off like a normal thing where I talked to them at the cart, but then we realized that once they had left, you know, because we did chase them off at that first one. We were like, when they realized what we were doing and that we knew stuff about them, they started packing up and leaving, and we were like, yeah, okay, good. Call the police on pedophiles, you know, shouting after them. Not in an angry way, but like just in a, you know, we were just shouting to them to let them know. But yeah, after that, we realized they didn't actually go home. They just set up right around the corner, and we thought, wow, they have some nerve just setting up around the corner thinking that we wouldn't notice. So we got pretty upset. I know I definitely got upset. I can't really speak for Rick. I think he was too, though. And I was like, oh no, not in my town, not today. So I, crossed the street to where they had set up again. And I went back and I taunted them a bit. I wasn't like, threatening them or anything, but I was telling them, are you guys proud of yourselves? You really, are you you're really proud of yourselves, huh? You're getting a big thumbs up from Jehovah right now, protecting child abusers, and oh, look at you smiling. You're really enjoying this, that kind of thing. And then they finally left again, and I think that time for good. They didn't set up again. I feel like, that kind of attitude wasn't productive, and I do regret that one. But I don't regret the other Kingdom Hall, like the Kingdom Hall stuff that I did, or the other cart stuff that I did. I don't regret that. Because all I did was go into a place where I was implicitly or explicitly, in some cases, invited, and tell the truth, and share, what happened to my mother, and share, actual life-saving information as opposed to what they like to say about their own publications. Oh, I have some life-saving information. Yeah. No, what I was sharing was actual life-saving information. And, I didn't threaten them. I didn't call them names. Well, in the Rick and Morty crash, I did call the elders child molester protectors. But that's because those elders, they knew what they were doing. And even when I talked to them outside, it was evident to me that they knew and they didn't care. So yeah. But normally, under normal circumstances, in the rest of them, I didn't call them any offensive names. I didn't swear at them. I wasn't like doing anything. Now, I will say this. I don't know if anybody caught this in the documentary, but as I was walking out of the Kingdom Hall and walking away from it, I kind of shot him one of these. I threw up one of these at them as I was walking away. I was like, yeah. Threw it behind my back at him. And I didn't remember that I did that. I must have been like dissociating or something, but I really didn't remember doing that. And then I saw it in the documentary. I was like, oh my God. And I was surprised they didn't blur it out either. They left that in. I was like, oh, I just flipped off the elders. Okay. But, I did that, I realized, probably because I was so done by that point. Like, they had been filming me in the morning, in the afternoon, and then finally in the evening. Like, we had been filming all day. And it was, like, really emotionally exhausting, having to talk about all that stuff for an entire day. And having to go visit my grandmother. Just visiting my grandmother would have been a lot for me on a normal day. But they had a schedule they needed to keep to, and, they couldn't just be here for multiple days. So, I was like, yep, let's do this. And I did, I got through it, but boy, was I tired at the end of the day, like mentally and physically. So yeah, and the way that they were treating me, since that was my first time doing a protest, presenting as fully male and everything, as myself, that they went and they really treated me like, like like a dude. They were very violent with me. Like, for the first time, they were truly very violent with me. And yeah. Yeah, so I was like, ugh, I was just like, you know what? And I was like, you know what? Here you go. Have some of that. Like, I flipped them off. At least I think that's what happened. I really don't remember doing that, but I could see that because I was like super done with those guys. And if you saw the video of the footage, you heard me like when they were trying to get a picture of the license plate at the end. You heard me say, "Yeah, go ahead. It's rented. Piss off." I definitely toned it down for my next crash, which the protest that I did. The disruption, the demonstration, whatever you want to call it, just anything but crash, because crash has a negative connotation and doesn't really apply. The protest demonstration that I did next was actually the Rick and Morty one at the memorial. That was the next one that I did. So I did try to tone it down, but I also made sure to try to keep myself relatively level-headed and not let them get to me as much as I did in that one, in the one in the documentary. In the one in the documentary, they really got to me. I was already very emotionally taxed at that point. But in the Rick and Morty one, I tried not to let them get to me. And I think that went over a little bit better. Because it really pisses them off when they can't upset you, when they can't jar you or rattle you. It really pisses them off. Nothing pisses them off more than you being calm and collected. And I realized that for sure after that one. Oh, excuse me for shifting in my chair here. Let's see here. I've read experiences and have been told by a couple of cousins of their horror stories with foster care and CPS having poor judgment. Yeah, CPS is awful. I should do a video on everything wrong with those people. Some of the people that work for CPS are well-meaning, but as a government organization, CPS is just flawed from the ground up. There's so much wrong with it. But that's a subject for another time. Were there any hints of an interest in a follow-up documentary or a part 2? Not as far as I'm aware, and I am, in contact still with the executive producer. So if I hear anything, I'll let y'all know. But as far as I am aware, this was a one-time project. Your grandmother softened compared to the time she visited before. She's sweet and kind, just under the influence and the fear-mongering that controlled us all when we submitted to it. Yeah, so what you don't hear in the part that they shared on the documentary is the part where she explains that she was told by the elders, like they counseled her and told her to be nice to me, because being mean wasn't going to bring me back. And so basically that's her explaining why she's not screaming at me this time. And I have a feeling that the reason they counseled her and told her to do that is because they were probably made aware of the video on YouTube of her screaming at me and kicking me out of her house that one time that you're talking about, Dave. Let's see here. JW attendant mafia thugs manhandling. They didn't even discuss your concerns, unlike that initial video you did a few years ago where those two brothers actually conversed and listened somewhat. Yeah. And I think they only listened to me that one time because, like I said, that was my old haul that I did the first time. And because I was presenting as female, so they may have even felt like a small amount of sympathy for me. So, they didn't feel as threatened by me back then. Once they realized that this was going to be a thing I was doing all the time, though, and when other people were doing it as well, they started to realize, that I might be a threat. So they started to treat me like one instead. Plus, I think when I did that first protest, they hadn't yet gotten orders from the branch and specific instruction on how to treat people like me. So, they were just kind of going off the cuff, doing what they thought was probably best to handle it. But after that, they got orders to do very specific things, which is why it's almost the same every time I would do it after that. Your invitation has been revoked. Please leave the premises immediately. That kind of thing. And then turning on the music, too. That's another thing that they're told to do. They invited us to control and bully our lives, yeah. The elders flipped us off for not knowing to them and their barbaric influence any longer. For not kowtowing, sorry. Not kowtowing to them and their barbaric influence any longer. Turnabout's fair play. Yeah, I still kind of wish I hadn't flipped him off, but I did. But that wasn't... I still don't consider that to be thuggish behavior. So I guess we're going to have to agree to disagree, whoever said that. And by the way, just in case it's unclear, because I keep getting comments that say this, I am not a woman, and I thought that came across in the documentary, but I guess not, so I'm going to say it again. I am not a woman, so, if you're going to leave a comment saying I'm a lady or a girl or a woman, please don't. I'm not going to delete your comments because unlike certain YouTubers who I won't name, I don't delete comments. I'm fine with dissenting viewpoints and stuff. And if you want to be an asshole in my comments section, I'm fine leaving that there too so that everybody can see how you are, and how you conduct yourself. I'm not going to hide that. So, do you, but I'm asking you nicely here, please, if you're going to criticize me, at least, if you're going to criticize or compliment me, it doesn't matter, please at least, refer to me properly. My pronouns are he or they. I am not a woman. I identify as a non-binary transmasculine guy. You can call me a man, that's fine. You can call me just a person, that's also fine, but woman is not, that's not me. Sorry. Not sorry. So yeah, let's see here. I do appreciate the sentiment in the one comment that I got that called me a brave woman. I appreciate the sentiment. I just, I have to say, I have to, stand my ground on that. I'm not a woman. I ran into a wheelchair-bound JW locally at the store yesterday. I knew well. That I knew well. He tells me, they said you left Jehovah. I told him, they left Jehovah by covering up child abuse. That's typical that they talk about you like that after you leave. Did you ever get a chance to look through the large JW document leak touched on in the documentary? I have seen parts of it, and it is horrendous and very compelling evidence. I mean, you can't look through that stuff and not have your jaw drop in shock and have your image of the organization tainted by that, because yeah, I mean, I think you know why. Yeah. Also, back to the comments that have been left about, people criticizing me about this stuff and saying that I discredit the documentary and stuff. It's always been my view that all forms of activism are valid. I think every type of activism out there is important because they all work together as a system. If like JWFacts.com or, the ARC stuff didn't exist, if other YouTubers didn't exist, if websites that host documents didn't exist, I wouldn't have anywhere to send anybody when I'm doing my protests. I wouldn't have any place to point them to say, look, here's the evidence. I think that people who leave reviews on Google and stuff, or Yelp or whatever, I think those people are valid in their form of activism. I think people who just talk to people in public, like when I talk to Lyft drivers, or when I just talk to a random person. Like I actually spoke to a lady when I was making an appointment yesterday to have an emergency appointment for today. I talked to the lady who was scheduling the appointment about, the cult. I know you're probably wondering, like, how did that even come up? Long story, but yeah. I think that's a valid form of activism. I think sharing your story, on various platforms, I think that's a form of activism. I think donating to, homeless shelters, or even supporting a friend, who is coming out of the organization, I think that's a valid form of activism. I think donating to educational programs, donating to mental health programs, I think those are valid forms of activism. I think trying to start community programs in your area for displaced Jehovah's Witnesses that are trying to leave, I think that's a valid form of activism. So yeah, I think everything is important and everything works together. And I know that people think that what I do going into the kingdom halls and stuff, that's not good because it's going to drive them deeper into their persecution complex. And that may be true for some Jehovah's Witnesses, but the thing is, they can't unhear what I said. They can't. And there's a good chance that a good number of them definitely listened, definitely heard. You can tell by the looks on their faces that they heard what I said, and it plants a seed. They may not immediately rush to go and check out what I've said, but it will weigh on them. They will remember, because, me going in there and saying that kind of stuff, that kind of breaks the spell they're under for a second there. Because you're in a little bit of a trance when you're in the Kingdom Hall as a Jehovah's Witness. The music comes on, it lulls you into that, being prepared to receive indoctrination state, and then you're just kind of in zombie mode. But then me going in there, or somebody else going in there and breaking that trance for a moment, it kind of just, it jars you out of your sleep, so to speak, and you hear those things, and it creates a memory, a very strong memory, because that's not something that happens every day in the Kingdom Hall. It creates a very strong memory for you, and you will think back on it. And then you maybe even start to wonder, why would somebody do that? Satan's influence aside, isn't this Jehovah's organization? Why is that even allowed to happen in Jehovah's house? Why didn't Jehovah protect us? And what was that person talking about child abuse and the Australian Royal Commission? What even is that? And then at that point, maybe it's days down the line, maybe it's months down the line, maybe it's even years down the line. It plants a seed. And I know from experience and from people telling me after I've gone to their kingdom halls, from people reaching out to me and saying, hey, you were at my kingdom hall and blah, 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 blah. I know from experience that festers and weighs on them, and they do eventually go, many of them anyway, will actually go look it up. And not only that, they look even deeper into stuff after that and find out more. And then they go tell other people too. They tell people in their family or in their congregation, or even ask the elders about it. So, it's contagious. Which is why the elders really hate that happens, because it's direct. It's a lot more direct than, if you just kind of put it out there on the internet and hope somebody finds it. Again, I'm not saying that that's not a valid form of activism. That is an absolutely necessary part of activism. But yeah, you get in there, you tell them to their faces, and they get curious. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if my family watched the documentary, my grandmother included. I wouldn't be surprised. They get curious. That's another thing I know from personal experience and from hearing it from former Jehovah's Witnesses who reach out to me. They get curious, and they watch things that they're not supposed to. I also know that because I find them in my comments sections all the time. Especially on the protests that I do. I find them on my comments section telling me I'm crazy or that I deserve to be beheaded or whatever. Or that if I went to their Kingdom Hall, they'd beat me up. It's really surprising to me. It never ceases to surprise me, honestly, even after years of this happening, that Jehovah's Witnesses are really violent when they message you in private. I don't know why they think like that makes any sense as a Jehovah's Witness. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses are supposed to be peaceful, right? But I've had plenty of Jehovah's Witnesses tell me they would kick my ass, or that they hope I die in Armageddon, or that they're glad I'm going to die in Armageddon, and that I'm a disgrace to my mother, and she would probably, or that they're glad she's dead because she can't see this. I've had some really nasty stuff said to me by Jehovah's Witnesses, the peaceful organization. Let's see here. How long would you say it took between filming with the camera people versus documentary release? Just out of curiosity, Shane, are you the guy that messaged me on Reddit? I'm just wondering. But yeah, to answer your question, let's see here. I was filmed back in 2018. So it's almost been 3 years, because it was October of 2018 that I was filmed. So it's almost been 3 years from me being filmed to now. Let's see here. I would guess Watchtower keeps a database list of those JWs who've lost their lives due to no blood doctrine, just like the child abuse list is hidden. Maybe they do. I don't know why they would, but perhaps. But I still would think that there are a bunch of undocumented deaths from that, because there are even inactive or even disfellowshipped JWs who still lose their lives to that. Like I said before, being still mentally indoctrinated, but being away from the organization, people often still do adhere to JW beliefs, because they really do believe it's the truth, but they've been kicked out, or they believe it's the truth, but they're just, inactive because they feel guilty about leading a double life or whatever. So I still believe that there are a ton of deaths that are not documented. Let's see here. Those youngsters in the audience at the crash looked fascinated and bewildered with a subtle excitement. Those adult JWs were either showing a fake smile or a stoic frown fighting their conditioning. Emotional blackmail 101 with their JW threats. They beat their plowshares into swords when it's theocratic warfare time, a la the Freddie Franz Nathan Noor battle cry. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's the creepy part, is you'll see this in a lot of my other protests too, not just the one in the documentary. It is so creepy that some of them smile when I'm talking about what happened to my mom. They smile like they're amused by it. Now the kids, I'll cut them some slack, because I don't think they're smiling because of what I'm saying about my mother. I think they're smiling because, oh, thank God, something broke the monotony of this boring ass meeting. Ugh. This is like the most entertaining thing that's happened to me at a meeting ever. Like the fact that somebody broke in and gave these elders a run for their money. I think that's why the kids smile, or look like they're holding back a smile, or look entertained. But the adults are smiling that contemptuous JW smile that I was talking about, that made me angry at the cart protest that I did, the one where I got really pissed off. They do that contemptuous, I'm being persecuted and I love this, I'm awesome, I have the truth. that, very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know the word that I'm looking for. I forgot. But where you just feel like you're right, and you're like, yep, that's right. Yeah, go ahead and go ahead and say what you want. I know I'm right. Blah blah blah. It's like a shit-eating grin almost. but yeah, some of them have that. Some of the adults in the audience do have that. And it's weird and creepy, and I hate it. Lots of physically out, mentally ins out there still, psychologically in, unfortunately. Yes, that's true. I've actually had people yell at me online in various platforms telling me that what I'm doing is wrong and the Jehovah's Witnesses are peaceful. And they're like, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness, but it's because I can't be, because I'm not good enough to be one. I've literally had them say that to me before. And they're like, my family are Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not one because I'm not good enough to live that life. But you need to leave them alone because they're peaceful people and they're good people and blah, blah, blah. Do you think the memory effect could be enhanced if you say, if say you address the teenagers directly? The same tapped feeling you have the same tapped feeling you have. I had it. I am the adult version of your same experiences. Okay, so actually I have directly addressed the younger people in the audience. You can check out my 2019 and 2018 memorial videos. They're called Memorial 2018 and Memorial 2019. And you can see in those, I do directly address the children. I tell them, children, you can leave this organization. People out there care about you. You don't have to go through this. There are resources. You report it if something is happening to you. Stuff like that. So I do talk to the children. Let's see here. I don't think their meetings will ever be the same again, with them going to Zoom and selling off kingdom halls and consolidations, forcing many JWs traveling long distances with high gas cost. Yeah, it's unlikely. I know it was hard on some people in my family when they pushed everybody into one congregation locally here. Like, they moved everybody, and that was like really hard on them because it was a very long drive from their home to the Kingdom Hall, but they still did it. I remember when I tried to go back when I was 26, just to kind of be a fringe witness and just trying to get baptized just so I could talk to my family while not planning on having any actual, regular involvement with the witnesses. I remember that initially I was like, I went back to my original Kingdom Hall that I had grown up going to, and the elders tried to tell me that I had to go to one that was closer to, or that was in the quote-unquote territory that I actually lived in, even though I really didn't live far from this Kingdom Hall. And I asked them if they could, please make an exception and let me continue to attend the one that I was going to, because, I knew people there and I was more comfortable going there. And, I could tell the elder that was telling me this stuff was like, he really didn't want me to defy him, but he said, well, we can't force you to go to the other one. We would really prefer that you did stay in your correct territory, though, but, if this is easier for you for the time being, then, I guess go ahead and continue coming here. They were really trying to make me go to a different Kingdom Hall and uproot myself. And this was, in the very beginning when I was just trying to quote unquote, come back. So yeah, they're more concerned about organizing you into the right territory or whatever than they are about whether or not you feel comfortable. I should have known, this was before I knew about any of the child abuse stuff, so I just knew that there was something wrong with them, but I didn't know about all that stuff yet. And I had already been out since I was 17. And I was 26 at the time that I tried to go back. So yeah, I knew something was off, and I should have known by the way they were treating me just about that small matter that they didn't give a shit about the kids that were being abused. I should have known. Even my own experiences with my parents, I'll have to talk about it more in detail sometime, but my, to keep it short version is I told my grandmother about something bad that had happened to me, and she very heavily discouraged, me reporting it. And so, yeah, I should have known how everybody feels about that, based off of how they felt about me just wanting to stay at the Kingdom Hall where I grew up. They didn't care about how I felt or if I was comfortable or if I felt safe. They just cared about, keeping everything organized and whatever the hell. Organized to do Jehovah's crimes. That should be the real title of that book. I don't think their meetings will ever be the same again. Oh yeah, you already said that. I already said that. Sorry. Yeah, so I've been processing the documentary. Yeah, like I said, I watched it a couple of times last night. I watched it again today. I don't regret doing it, and I feel very proud and honored to even be in the company of the others who were in it. And I am so glad that my mother's memory is strengthened, by virtue of her being shown in this documentary. Because I believe my mother was a good person. She just went through a lot of horrible stuff and was not the same human being that she normally was because of her alcoholism. That's not who she really was. That was the alcohol. But yeah, it was hard to watch. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And yeah, sorry for jumping around on topics here. I do have ADHD, but yeah. To the people who think that this is not the way to do activism to try to actually help people, I hope you heard what I said about, the planting the seed and everything, and that the direct method does actually work. I've actually had people reach out to me. Oops, sorry. Yeah, there we go. I've actually had people reach out to me on multiple occasions telling me that because of what I did, they did actually leave. That they woke up. And that what I said in there, they looked into it and everything. So I know it works. And there is no one method that's going to work on everybody. That's what some people don't seem to realize, is there is no one method. I know that me going in there and saying that stuff isn't going to work on everybody. It's not going to reach everybody. Different human beings respond to different things. That's why all activism is valid and all activism is important. And I've done different types of tactics in the past, and I do different kinds of activism. I don't just go into kingdom halls. I have, spoken with people directly. I've done Bible studies. I've done lots of different stuff. Even just picketing outside of a kingdom hall. It's, there is no one way to do it. And saying this is not the way, you know what that reminds me of? That kind of, short-sighted, narrow-minded viewpoint kind of reminds me of being in a cult, where they tell you there's only one way to do this and that. Jehovah's Witnesses believe there's only one way to live, one way to worship, one way, one way. You can't do Christianity any other way than their way. And that's not true. There is no one way to live your life. There is no one way, to worship God if you want to worship God, the Christian God or whichever God you worship. There is no one way to do activism. And that saying that what I do, which I think they're only referring to the Kingdom Hall protests, telling me that is not the way is just, I'm sorry, it's just not true. It is a way. There is no the way, but it is a way to do it. And it does reach people. Like I said, I have proof of that with experiences with people literally reaching out to me. It does work on some people. There is no one method that works on everybody. It is effective, and I have years of evidence showing me that it is in fact effective. It does not make me a thug. But you're entitled to your opinion. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But I have evidence to the contrary, so I'm gonna disagree with you on that. And if you have a problem with what I do, and you think that somebody else does it better, that's fine. I'm not sure why you come to my channel to tell me that I'm doing something that's not working when there's plenty of evidence that it does, and why you don't allow people to just do their own forms of activism. I think everybody should do what they feel is the best type of activism for them to do. Some people are good at making content to educate people. Some people are good at doing direct action like what I do. Some people are good at helping in their community, and that's what they do. Everybody is necessary in this. And to the people who just tell me that that this is bad and that this is the wrong way to do it, well, I look forward to seeing your video where you show me the right way. Really, I do. I would love to see it. I'm not being a sarcastic asshole here. I'm being 100% serious. I would love for you to share with me your video of you doing it the right way and showing me how it's done. Can't wait. I love seeing people do activism. I want people to do whatever they feel is the best for them. What's comfortable to them, what's safe for them. Because as I was telling somebody earlier on Reddit, you should never do anything to overextend yourself or that's going to be harmful to you. So if there's a certain type of activism that you believe is going to be harmful to you, don't do it. If you still want to do activism, find something else to do. Like, find a different type. There are ways to be an activist that are accessible and that can be good for you without like triggering your PTSD. Because I know a lot of people tell me that they would never be able to go into a Kingdom Hall because it would trigger the crap out of them. And I believe it. Yeah, I mean, it triggers me. I personally witness Amante, I think is what it says, or yeah, Amante 714 says, I personally witness marriages between men over 30 and 15-year-old girls. I hate what this religion normalized in my mind. I'm so happy this doc was made. I've been wishing for it so long. Yeah, well, I'm glad that you got to see it. That's fantastic. I love hearing feedback from people about this because it makes me really happy that this is helping people or that this is validating to people. That's part of why I did this. The other part is to inoculate people against the witnesses, the general public, to let them know what's going on. Kimmy O'Donnell's experiences were horrid. How she kept that within her all those years reflects the level of authoritarian dictates of bullying and intimidation, especially the abuse to born-ins. Yes, that was like so hard to listen to. I just wanted to give her a hug. I have experiences that are similar, and I know, I just know, and my heart goes out to her. Shock and awe works from time to time. It worked for Martin Luther King and Malcolm X regarding racial prejudice. It works with child abuse awareness and destructive cult influence. Right. It does have an effect. It is effective to a degree, just like everything else. For instance, people who make videos discussing Jehovah's Witness literature and breaking it down and showing why it's inaccurate and all that stuff, that works on only some people. Guess what? There's a ton of Jehovah's Witnesses that won't work on. One, because they're not going to even look at it. And then two, the ones that do secretly look at it are just watching it to disagree with it. Like, they're hate watching it. Or they're watching it just to disprove everything. Or, just bury... And they can actually bury themselves deeper in their indoctrination when they watch that stuff too. They can go, nope, see, listen to these apostate lies. I knew I had the truth. This guy is full of crap. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's misinterpreting that, that literature. He's misinterpreting that scripture. He doesn't even know what he's talking about. And where does he get off saying this? And then they go and yell at the person too. So yeah, like I said earlier, not every method works on every single person. There is no one right way to do it. Different people can be reached in different ways. We are all different human beings. Not every one of us thinks the same or reacts the same to things or, personally is affected by everything in the same way. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a break and have a sip of this lovely Dr. Pepper cream soda, 0 sugar, because let's be frank here, I don't need the sugar. I'm not the skinny little human being that I was in the documentary anymore. Chronic illness has made me pretty immobile, so I can't get out and exercise as much as I used to. Let's see here. I expected people to have criticisms. They always have. That's not new. But yeah, of course, like I've always said, you're entitled to your opinion, and I look forward to seeing you show me how it's done. I'm open to that always. I'm open to dissenting views. I like to hear different viewpoints and consider them, of course. Even if I end up ultimately disagreeing, I like it. I like it because I think that's normal. I don't expect everybody to think exactly the same way I do, and quite frankly, I think it would be weird. Because we are not robots. We are individuals. We all have our own opinions. We all have our own thought processes. And that's what makes the world go round, is that we're all different. It would be very boring and creepy and weird if we all thought exactly the same. Plus, activism wouldn't be very effective if we all, if all of us activists thought exactly the same and were on the same page about how to do things, we might not be as effective as a whole, because we wouldn't be doing different things to try to reach different types of people. For some people, you really do. That's why I go directly to them, actually, is because I know that, it's not enough to just hope that witnesses are going to secretly go and look at apostate stuff, because I didn't, when I was a witness, when I was growing up and all that stuff, even for the time that I was out before I tried to go back at 26, even when I was out and I kind of knew that something was wrong with the organization, and left when I was 17, I didn't go and look at apostate stuff. I didn't go look up why are Jehovah's Witnesses bad, or Jehovah's Witness, anything. I didn't look up anything bad about them, because I felt like it was enough that I realized, that I didn't really believe what they believed, and it was something was up with them. I just couldn't figure out what, and I was like, well, I'm out, and I guess that's enough. I still didn't look anything up. So I don't expect people, even people who realize something's wrong, I don't expect anybody to just, or everybody, I don't expect everybody to go and look stuff up. I don't. Some people need to be told directly before they'll even consider it. Some people just literally don't know, because, they are kept in the dark about stuff. They are told not to look at stuff, and a lot of people are obedient to that. I know that there are also a lot of witnesses who do sneakily, go and peek at stuff like that, but I would say probably the majority of them are obedient to that. And then the ones that do sneak off and look at stuff, they may not even, look for too long, because I know that when I first looked at something that was considered apostate material when I was 26, I immediately got this kind of feeling of anxiety in my chest, wait, am I on a slippery slope here? Am I looking at something bad? Should I even be looking at this? These people probably just hate Jehovah's Witnesses. I probably shouldn't look at this. I seriously thought that, and I had already been out for years. I was 26. I had been out since I was 17. So, I was already out for 9 years, and I was still maybe I shouldn't look at that. These people probably are making this up because they don't like Jehovah's Witnesses. I know they're not, I know they're probably, wrong. The witnesses are probably wrong about stuff, but these people are saying some pretty messed up stuff. So I was like, I don't know. But then I went ahead and I was like, no, I need to know if this is true. Because if it's true, I can't be part of this. This is not something I would even want to pretend to be a part of, to go back to just to see my family. I can't do it. I don't want my children around this if this is true. So yeah, I don't know. I don't expect everybody to respond the same way to everything. Just like I don't expect when I go into the Kingdom Hall for everybody to run off and go look at everything that I said, to go and try to fact check it. I do know that some people will, because it's already happened a lot of times. And hell, there's probably people that did go and look at what I said. They went and looked it up and tried to verify it, who didn't reach out to me. I don't know the exact number of people I've helped, which is unfortunate because I kind of would like to know. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because whoever I helped. It doesn't change the fact that I helped them. Just because I don't know how many, or know them, or whatever personally. Imagine realizing something was wrong at age 8, but being ignored or told everything is fine your whole life. Yeah, I don't have to imagine. That was my reality. I was born in. I'm a 4th generation born in. So, I used to, like I said in the documentary, I had a lot of questions my whole life, and I even asked my grandmother. I remember I was probably around age 8 when I asked my grandmother, how do we know we're in the right religion? Because there are a lot of them. There are so many, even different kinds of Christianity. How do we know we're the right one? I remember, clear as day, we were driving in the car home from the meeting, actually, and she said that it's because the Bible says. And I was like, what? What does that even mean? And she didn't really explain further, and that was her stock answer. The Bible says. It's in the Bible. We can prove it in the Bible. Because I asked her a bunch of times, not just that one, but that was the first time I remember that I asked her that. And I was even a little afraid to ask her. I remember that too. I was kind of afraid, should I be questioning this? Am I going to get in trouble? I was surprised she didn't get angry at me, because my grandmother is, and kind of always has been, very, very loyal. I mean, as far as the indoctrination stuff and the belief goes, she did get disfellowshipped for like 15 plus years. I I won't share why, because I think I have in the past, but I won't say it again, because I'm not here to like shame my grandmother for that, for what she did. But yeah, it wasn't a crime. Let's just put it that way. It was just we'll call it a lapse in judgment, and it wasn't. It was morally not great what she did, but it wasn't a crime. It wasn't something like that. But yeah, she was disfellowshipped, but she still believed all that time, even though she was living, a quote unquote worldly life and drinking and doing drugs and stuff. Like, she still believed everything they taught, and she told me, I remember when I was 17, she told me that she couldn't go back because she committed an unforgivable sin, and she just didn't feel like she was worthy, that she didn't feel worthy to Jehovah. So, and I remember, because like right after my mom died, when I said in the documentary it was the last straw, I really was talking about that it was the last straw for me, as in like I was afraid at that point. I was like, well, I don't want to like lose my family or die, so I better get with the program. I actually started seriously studying at that point, like not too long after my mom died. I remember at my funeral, I even asked a sister, or at my mom's funeral, I asked a sister if I could start studying with her, and then I did. And and I tried my best. I tried to indoctrinate myself, even though I really didn't believe. Because I thought, well, they take this very seriously. I will lose my family, or I will die, or whatever. I was afraid to die in the organization, but I was also afraid to die outside of it. I was like, I want to be able to see my mom if this is true. I still wasn't sure. Like, I knew that there were some things wrong and that some things didn't seem true, but like, I was like, just on the off chance that they're right, I want to be able to see my mom. I want to make my family happy. And so, yeah, I studied, and I made it to being an unbaptized publisher before I dipped out, also at 17. I was like literally the day before I turned 18, I left my grandmother's house because she was going to kick me out, and I went to live with my boyfriend at the time and his family. And yeah, it was I remember in the documentary saying that was the last straw. Gosh, I'm sorry, I'm going to read comments real quick. I told Bill Bowen that's why I was literally too frightened to look at or take in his old Silent Lambs marches and documentary appearances. We were told at Assemblies not to watch Dateline and Panorama. We used to hear experiences of some who were disfellowshipped for a long time, who came back and then held high by the organization as being stronger spiritually than before, to near fanaticism. Yeah, that tracks. That's typical. My grandmother, right, like where I was going with that earlier, is that I tried to tell my grandmother that I'm sure that she didn't commit the unforgivable sin, because I had never heard her talk about the organization in a negative way. So I really didn't understand what she meant by that. So I tried to give her magazines and like help her to come back. It wasn't me who ultimately helped her come back, though. I was out of the organization and 21 or so when she finally did go back, and it was because she had attended one of my cousin's baptisms, and she was so moved by it that she broke down and, she started studying again. And I think they were praying on her. My aunt was probably praying on her, trying to get her to come back, because at that time my grandmother was living alone in her big house that you see in the documentary. She was living alone because my uncles had moved out. I had moved out. I had long moved out. And she was by herself and depressed. And, easy prey for the Jehovah's Witnesses. She was probably thinking a lot about how she's going to die alone, and Jehovah was probably going to kill her or not bring her back to life or anything. She wasn't going to be, quote-unquote, in Jehovah's memory. So yeah, she broke down, and now she's a pioneer. She's back, and has been. Love and respect to you. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. They caught me with that resurrection fish hook in 1992 at age 20, as my mom died from a 12-year cancer battle. They made it like joining the JWs would guarantee a resurrection, captive entrapment. Yeah, that really upsets me, Dave. I'm really sorry that they used your mom like that to get, to emotionally ensnare you into joining, because that's really heinous. That is absolutely disgusting. And my brother actually uses my mom's death too to try to preach to people. And then he gets angry at me for talking about my mother, and he says that I'm using my mother, to advertise for apostasy and stuff. I'm like, bro, no. That's why he disowned me back when I first started doing activism. Because he was upset that I was using my mother like that. Meanwhile, he literally does that for a cult, but okay. Do you recall a long line of JWs waiting in line to meet and give gifts to the governing members at Assemblies? Not only do I remember people waiting to do that kind of thing, but I also remember whenever there was a circuit overseer visit, everybody would line up after the meeting, and gather around in a big crowd waiting to give them a green handshake. And they would take them out to dinner every time that they were there, and they would even let them stay at their homes, and pay for all their meals and stuff. And it was ridiculous. And I remember seeing that. I remember realizing it the first time. I just went up to go say hi to the CEO because my study dragged me over there. They were like, come on, let's go say hi and everything. And I remember seeing people reaching out to give them a handshake, and they literally, like it was a drug deal. They would literally like, here's the money, here, and then they would take it. I was like, why do they got to do it on the sly like that? If it's an okay thing to do, why don't you just hand it to them like normal? Why do you have to do it like a drug deal? Yeah, it was weird. But that signaled to me that, because they were trying to do it sneakily like that it was something that was wrong or frowned upon, or maybe they didn't want people that were outsiders who were just visiting or new. They didn't want them to see it and think anything weird about it. But, I know from personal experience in seeing family members of mine and other Jehovah's Witnesses that I knew, that Jehovah's Witnesses are sneaky about money all the time. Well, not all of them, but like a lot of them are. Like the ones that clean houses and stuff, like my grandmother, they do things like evade taxes. I know my grandmother did for years. She told me that she stopped when she went back to the organization in the past 13 years or whatever now. Yeah, it's been like 13 years, I think. And she told me she stopped that. But yeah, tax evasion, that's a thing. They're like, yeah, I'm just gonna not report these things this income that I'm getting. I used to write the checks out for the Circuit Overseer's apartment fund with their sedan fund, and their dry cleaning when I was the accounts servant as a ministerial servant. Yeah, I believe that. I know that they get paid. I asked the elder about that in the call that I put up. Physically and mentally and elder admissions. Yeah, that's what it's called, the video. I asked him about that. I was like, oh, so they don't get paid, they don't, like, get housing or anything like that. And he told me the truth. He actually said, yeah, I mean, they get an apartment, and he even told me the location of it in town. He's like, there's an apartment that they get to use when they're here, and a car. They get a basic, car and everything. And he even told me I think the make and model of the car. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's in the video. Yeah, like a drug deal. Yes, LOL facts. It is like a drug deal. That's exactly what it looked like to me. Like you would see in a movie, or like I've seen in real life, actually. The green handshake. Probably paid cash under the table a lot. Yeah. I mean, because a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses have to do a lot of manual labor type jobs and a lot of self-employment, because if they weren't their own boss, it would be difficult for them to be, be out in service all the time, or make their schedule to where they're available for meetings and stuff. If they weren't their own boss, it would be hard to do that. So yeah, self-employed JWs, like, I know from personal experience that a lot of them pay themselves under the table. They don't file taxes truthfully. Yet they brag, boast, and claim how honorable they supposedly are, with conscientiously paying taxes. What a bunch of hypocrites. Yeah, now I'm not going to say like all JWs do this, but like I know of some that did, and I know that a lot of them did. My grandmother included, until, like I said, until she came back to the organization. Then she told me she was, anyway, that she was filing taxes and everything. I don't even think she files taxes at this point because she's not working. She finally had to retire from her cleaning houses job. Yeah. But yeah, this documentary was cool. Very, very well done. Very difficult to watch. Heartbreaking. It was a lot. And I'm glad it came out. It took a while. If you're curious as to why it took almost 3 years for it to come out, a part of that is funding issues in the beginning. Like, they were looking for funding. About a year into it, they were still looking for funding. And then I think the second year was because COVID kind of screwed it up and slowed everything down. And then finally, they were going to have it released earlier in the year. They were actually planning on releasing it in the spring. But what held that one up is that they actually submitted it to the Tribeca Film Festival, which I hadn't seen the documentary yet when they told me that. I saw it with everybody else, when it came out. But that signaled to me that it was going to be really good, because you don't submit crap to Tribeca. You submit your best stuff. Something really important. Something really well done. So I knew it was going to be good, just based off of the fact that they thought it was good enough for Tribeca. Unfortunately, Tribeca did not take their submission. Like, I mean, they watched it and everything, but like they didn't include them in the film festival this time around because it was not on brand for what they were doing. But that doesn't mean that the documentary wasn't incredible. It just means that they were going in a different direction this time around. So yeah. I'm really glad that everybody got a chance to watch it that has. If you do need help watching it still, get in touch with me, or I don't know if it's okay to tell them this, Dave, but they can maybe ask Dave or ask somebody you know, or go on Reddit. There's like a ton of people helping each other out there. If you would like to contribute to the people that made this. I encourage you to go and purchase the episode on Amazon. It's only $2.99, so that's not too bad. Or if you really want to like throw a lot of money at, I don't think subscribing to a streaming service is gonna give the people who made the documentary more money than they would get if they got it if you bought it on Amazon. So maybe that might not be a great route to go. But yeah, if you want to support them, go buy it on Amazon. And just in case anybody was wondering, no, we were not paid for doing the documentary. That was not part of the equation. And even if they had tried to pay me, I would have declined. I would have not taken any money for that. It deserves an award, very professionally and honorably and fairly well done. Did your congregation always have an announcement stating they were always far from their donation goal to guilt everyone into donating more? Yes, they did. Not only did they do that for the monthly expenses, but they also did that at our assemblies and conventions. They would always I'd never attended a convention or an assembly where they were like, okay, we met our goal, we're good, or we're over our goal. Nope, never. It was always, and it was usually toward the last day of the convention, toward the end of that day, they'd be like, so we have an announcement that we are still behind on our goal, we're below the goal that we need to cover the expenses, and I have it on good authority from another Ex-JW that was a big scam. That especially for conventions and assemblies anyway, that because they very much covered everything, because he worked with the finances end of things, and he told me that everything was covered, and it was covered fairly easily. It's that they were actually profiting quite a bit off of conventions and assemblies. So yeah, that's kind of messed up. Thanks for bringing that up, actually. I completely forgot that was even a thing, but yeah, they profited off of conventions and assemblies. True story. Oh, by the way, I don't normally ask this, because I don't like to ask people to do this for me, because I always feel like it's my job to stand up for myself. But if you do see anybody in the comments referring to me as a woman or a girl or a lady or her or she, I would really appreciate it. It would really mean a lot to me if maybe you could correct them if you happen to see that. Usually when I see that kind of thing, if it's a nice comment, a well-meaning comment, like, oh, you're such a brave girl or lady or whatever, I'll correct them myself, and tell them that I appreciate their sentiment, but, I'm not a woman. But when it's a negative comment, I'm always like, I don't like to engage with the negative comments unless I have something constructive to say. So, I'm usually reluctant to just go in there solely for the purpose of correcting them about my gender. But yeah, I would really appreciate it if anybody happens to see that. And I know that some people do comment to those people, trying to tell them that what I'm doing is okay, or to defend something, on my behalf. And I appreciate that. But if you do see that, in the future, if you don't mind, I would so appreciate the backup in, correcting them about my gender. And again, calling me a man or a guy or a dude, those are all fine. They is fine, he is fine, him is fine, them is fine. Those are all fine. But I in no way identify as female or a woman. So, yeah. like from the bottom of my heart, I would truly appreciate if anybody sees that to, maybe give them a little reminder. And I thought it came across in the documentary. I mean, I stated it pretty clearly, but I guess maybe that person didn't actually watch the documentary. And, to call me a thug and say that discredits the documentary, that's not even really a constructive comment, or even in my opinion, like a valid opinion of theirs. Like, the people that are telling me that's not the right way to do it, at least I can take that as a criticism. I can understand where they're coming from. But like the ones that call me a thug, and tell me that I discredit the documentary, and say that Vice should have a talk with this man, that just seems like you're trying to be hurtful. That seems like you're just you're trying to insult. It doesn't seem like you're being constructive or sharing a valid opinion, or criticism even. That's just trying to be hurtful. So I'm not going to respond to that like in your comment. I'm not going to go over there and argue with you and tell you that you're being a mean person. I know I'm mentioning it here, but I just figured I'd address that just once at least in this video. That it doesn't seem like you're trying to be like critical in a valid way. And for the record, because that person did say like Vice should have a talk with this man, because I discredited the documentary apparently. Vice really, they support me very, very much. Excuse me. Vice had my back. They are allies. They loved the fact that I do that kind of activism. They love that I do activism at all. They were very supportive. They loved everything. They very much appreciated that I shared the story about my mom. They appreciated that everything. They even understood, they understand why I do what I do. So, oops. Just checking my internet, making sure nothing died. Yeah, they understand everything. So, Vice, we have talked. We are still in contact to this day. We were talking, while the documentary was even airing. Like, literally, we were texting. So, yeah, Vice has talked to me. Who do you? Why do you think that they put me on their documentary without having a conversation with me? Absolutely not. We've had so many conversations, both through text and email, not both. Through text, through email, through Zoom calls, through Google Meet. Like, we have had extensive amounts of conversations. So rest assured, Vice did talk to me. And they very much support me and, have no issues with what I did and what I've said. And they fact-checked everything. So, it's not like they're supporting... They would never support something that they weren't behind. That they didn't really believe was valid or that they thought was harmful. I know that because I talked to them about something else that was harmful or potentially harmful that they should maybe consider not including in the documentary. It wasn't about me. It was unrelated to me, and it was something else in the community that I was like, yeah, so about that, there's this harmful thing that maybe y'all should consider staying away from, because it would possibly be detrimental to include it in the documentary. But, and I'm not going to mention what that is publicly. I'm going to keep that to myself, because again, I think that kind of stuff it's ultimately detrimental. We'll just say it's like along the lines of infighting, but much more serious. Much more serious. So yeah, like there's and they listened, by the way. Like they don't want to put anything in the documentary that is gonna, discredit the activists and the people sharing their experiences who are victimized by the cult. They wanted everything to be as impactful and helpful and overall like genuinely meaningful as possible. They didn't want anything to tarnish that. So yeah, to the person who thinks that Vice needs to talk to me because I discredited the documentary and turned it into a pseudo documentary, they have, and they think I'm awesome. So yeah. And it's not a pseudo documentary. It is a legitimate documentary. 100% accurate, very well researched, very rigorously fact checked, and just very well put together, very sensitively handled, and maximally impactful. So, yeah. Let's see here. Dave says about the congregations announcing, the donation goal stuff. Mine did, especially at Assemblies, in announcing a deficit. Yep, that's what I'm talking about. With emphasis. And locally, when I had to read the accounts report, I'd have to come up with a fear push statement to guilt others' money. Yeah. I'm telling you. Happy to correct them when and where I see them. I saw a couple. Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate it. You're a pal. What you have done took huge balls. I appreciate it so much. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. Some are simply ignorant. Others want to antagonize. They have no clue what legitimate credibility is all about. Whoever is calling you a thug when it's the JWs behaving like thugs. Some things are better left unsaid. I agree, Dave. There's a time and a place, and it was not the time or the place. It's... yeah. I mean, you understand. This was also a truly authentic and fair documentary. The olive branch of opportunity was extended to Watchtower to respond, and they did their usual ostrich syndrome clam up. Yeah, I remember when I was in touch with the producers when we were still, working on the final stretch of the documentary. They were telling me, "Oh yeah, so we reached out to the governing body and we're waiting to hear back from them." And I was like, "Oh man, I really hope that they actually respond and they stop being such weenies, because I told them they never respond to any documentary like with an actual interview, because they were trying to get an interview. I said, I really hope you get an interview because you would be the first documentary who did." But I don't expect it, because they don't do interviews. They avoid them like the plague because they know exactly what that would get them into. They don't want to incriminate themselves any more than they already have. Okay, sorry about that. The internet did a thing again. Yeah, I don't know why tonight. I don't know what it is with the internet, but the internet did a thing again. So sorry about that. But yeah, they know that they would incriminate themselves further if they did a documentary. Like if they actually did an interview in a documentary. So they don't do that, and there's no way that's going to happen. Thank you, Asher. That was a very intense, accurate documentary. Yeah, thank you. Oops. Oh, apparently I am not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. So if I'm choppy, I apologize. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. Let me see here. Just gonna check something, sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, but the stream is having a little bit of a hard time. If I'm choppy, I'm not really sure, honestly. Today the internet is choosing violence against me. Well, against my stream. Sorry about that. But yeah, well, thank you, Sharon, for checking out the documentary and for your kind words. It really was an intense and accurate documentary. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm looking forward to seeing how far Zalkin and the other abuse attorneys will go. Zalkin clearly delineated the difference with how headstrong and defiant Watchtower versus churches and Boy Scouts. Yep, they are. I've told people who I was, telling about the documentary, just random people, Lyft drivers and all that stuff. And that lady that I was telling you about that I was on the phone with scheduling my appointment yesterday, I've told them, have you heard of Scientology? And they're always like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, well, JWs are as bad as and sometimes even worse than Scientology. So, yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm reading comments and stuff. Yeah. So yeah, the documentary was very intense. Something else I wanted to talk about that was like it really means a lot to me is I've been getting a lot of people reaching out to me through my The One Bun YouTube's Facebook page, and a lot of people reaching out to me on Discord, and a lot of people reaching out to me even in comments here, telling me that they're really glad, or that it was really impactful for them for me to mention the stuff about the LGBT experience. Somebody even told me that it moved them like a lot because they have they have a similar experience themselves being trans. That that line, specifically the line about me being gay and trans and an apostate, that was huge for them. And I don't know, I think I may have already discussed this, but on other streams I may have discussed this, but I made a point of having a long discussion with the producers, and and they talked to the director for me with Aaron, even though we'd met over Zoom and at least a couple of times. So I have talked to Aaron directly, but he was really busy at the time that we had this other discussion, so I had them relay my thoughts. But we've had a really long discussion, a few really long discussions about the LGBTQIA plus aspect of my experience. Because even though initially, when they were looking for somebody to do the documentary, they were looking for at least one person who was a member of the LGBTQ plus community. Even though initially that was the case, as it neared the end as it neared completion, the documentary, they were starting to wonder, if it was really necessary for me to mention that one line about me being gay and trans. If it was really necessary for me to mention that at the end or not. And we had long discussions about representation and about why it was very important, because they were wondering if it was necessary, because like they were wondering, well, does that really add anything to your story as far as being a Jehovah's Witness goes? And I told them, yes, absolutely, 100%. Being a member of the LGBTQ plus community really colors your experience as a Jehovah's Witness. It makes a big difference. So many things are different about your experience when you're LGBTQ plus and you're a Jehovah's Witness. Absolutely. Plus, I know from being part of the community and the crossover community of LGBTQ plus witnesses or ex-witnesses, I know that there are a lot of us, and I also know from watching other documentaries about Jehovah's Witnesses and smaller pieces on Jehovah's Witnesses that there really isn't much in the way of representation. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why the internet's doing this. Yeah, so like I was saying, I know from watching all these other documentaries and other small pieces on Jehovah's Witnesses that there's not a lot of representation for LGBTQI plus people that are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And I know that of that representation, there's not a lot. I can't even think of one, honestly. There's not any representation for trans, gay ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And they were also kind of wondering, like, what if people don't understand what it means to be trans and gay? We don't have, enough runtime to, like, kind of explain what that means and stuff. And I said, well, fortunately, you don't have to worry about that, because anybody who wants to know what that means, they'll go on Google and look it up, or they'll talk to family members who know. Because they were like, well, older people might not know. And I'm like, well, if they don't look on Google, which they probably will if they care and want to know about it, then they'll go and ask younger family members, hey, what does this mean? What does this mean, And their younger family members will probably know what it means and can explain it to them, or they'll Google it for them and help them figure it out. And that's good, because ultimately that helps normalize it. That helps add more representation and educate people. And they were saying, well, there's this isn't really a mainstream thing. There's not a lot of people that talk about this. And I'm like, that's all the more reason for it to be included here. More representation. It's so important. And they agreed with me. And I also mentioned that it would be factually inaccurate to represent me without mentioning that, because they were showing footage of me and pictures of me when I was a little, presenting as a little girl. And then they were going to show me as an adult and not include that I'm trans and that I don't identify as female. Probably not going to work out very well. Because, I've told them, like, people might think I'm a lesbian, because I was only 6 months on testosterone at the time. So my voice wasn't super deep. I mean, it's not super deep now, but, like, I was concerned about that. And I said, yeah, I know that would not be very good. And they agreed. They were like, yeah, from a factual standpoint and from an erasure standpoint, you're absolutely right. That would be a form of erasure. And that would be factually inaccurate, for us to misrepresent you as, even if it was unintentional, to misrepresent you possibly as being something that you're not and someone that you're not. And yes, it is, as you've explained, that it is relevant to your story. So they did keep that in. And they are really understanding, and they were really happy to be educated on everything, and they were just awesome. So they're true blue allies. I know what it says at the beginning of the documentary. It says, the views expressed in the documentary are not necessarily those of Vice itself. And, as a company, maybe not, but I know for a fact that the people that I was working with were definitely allies. And from what I understand about Vice, they are a very inclusive, very, progressive company. I mean, the producer that I was in contact with the most recently, I mean, she has her pronouns in her email signature. I mean, she's a cis woman, but like she has her pronouns in her email signature, which shows me she's trying to normalize, asking for people's pronouns or and stuff. So like that's fantastic, and I'm really glad that they included that about me, so that they can help normalize and educate and also validate the experiences of so many other people, like me, and people just in the community, in the same communities I'm in. And I've had people reaching out, thanking me for that, and telling me that it really meant something to them to have that mentioned, because they felt seen, they felt validated, and they hadn't seen that before in a documentary yet about Jehovah's Witnesses. And I had people coming to me and telling me their coming out stories and everything, and sharing with me, all these things about their experiences. So it's been really awesome to have people reach out to me and tell me that meant something to them, and tell me that really helped them and validated them. So that's like one of the best reactions I've gotten. I've gotten criticisms and all that stuff, and people thank me and everything, and that's really great. But knowing that I'm helping to validate a really small part of our community, it really warms my heart, and I'm really glad I could help. And I'm actually really glad that I have advocated for that to stay in. I mean, I didn't want it. I wanted everything in there to be truthful, and I think they did too. And it was important. It was important, and there's not a day in my life right now that I don't have to advocate for myself. I literally went to the doctor today and had to advocate for myself again. I have to be like, no, I'm actually, because like people see your medical documents and they're like, oh, okay, so you must be, female, despite what else it says on there. And I'm like, actually, I identify this way, and then, I'll educate them a little bit. So yeah, I have to advocate, and I have to educate on a pretty much a daily basis. And I feel like putting that in the documentary was important, because normalizing it means that more people in the future won't have to do this much work advocating for themselves and educating, as I'm doing and as other people in our generation are doing right now. So I feel like what I do now makes it easier on future generations. That's what I really want. I want my kids and my kids' kids not to have to deal with this crap as much. I want them to live in a world where they can be who they are, whoever that is, however that is, and they won't have to constantly live in fear or have to constantly advocate for themselves or constantly explain who they are and explain themselves. And and even like what I was asking for y'all to do in the comments section, I want them to not have to do that too. I welcome criticism, by the way. I welcome it, but I don't appreciate criticisms that include, taking a jab, a personal jab at, and misgendering me. Like, if you're going to criticize me, just criticize me. Don't misgender me. That kind of makes your argument a little invalid. I mean, it turns it into an insult instead of a criticism. So, criticize me, but use he, him, and guy or man or dude or whatever. Anyway. I'm sorry that this stream has been so long. Like, I just, I had so much to say, and, you know, I'm really, like, I'm still exhausted. I actually would have been on a lot earlier. It's just that you know, I was helping some people watch the documentary, and I was also, you know, I had been at the doctor in the morning for a while, and I was wiped. And I stayed up really late last night, you know, helping people watch the documentary and also watching it myself twice in a row and processing everything. Like, I am so wiped. And I didn't even sleep the night before the documentary because I was very anxious. And also there was a scorpion in my room. and yeah, he's still in here somewhere. He doesn't have a tail, I know that, because yeah, the tail is now outside. But he's in here, and he ain't happy. Fun scorpion fact, but not really. It's not fun. If they lose their tail, because sometimes they will throw their tail if they're, you know, trying to defend themselves. If they lose their tail, they can live up to 8 months, and it's not a fun life, though. They get stopped up with poop, because they need their tail to be able to use the restroom. So they basically live 8 months of being constipated, and then they die a horrible, horrible death. So that sucks for that scorpion, actually. I feel kind of bad for him. But yeah, I've been so wiped. I went to sleep at, like, what time is it? Yeah, I went to sleep, I want to say around, what was it, like 6? Yeah, I went to sleep at like 6 unintentionally. I just fell asleep. I couldn't handle it, and I even drank a Red Bull, but right before I fell asleep. Sometimes caffeine will knock me out. I keep forgetting that. If I drink too much, it'll make me really anxious and give me the jitters. But yeah, I drank a Red Bull, and I knocked out. And then I woke up, like, I think around 9 or 10 or something. No, it was like 9 that I woke up, and I checked out Reddit for a little bit, and then I got on here. So I was dead. Like, I was so tired. But yeah, I did want to jump on and make sure that I talked to everybody a little bit about my feelings about the documentary and other stuff. I do encourage, you know, to anybody to ask any questions that they want to. I'm pretty much an open book, you know, as long as they're, like, you know, they're just normal or well-meaning questions. If you want to ask a critical question, that's also fine. But stuff that I probably won't answer is stuff that's, like, clearly meant to, like, trigger me or insult me or something, like stuff like that. Or if you're asking really gross questions, like questions about my physiology that, you know, it's not really appropriate to ask stuff about, I probably won't answer you. But I have actually discussed that stuff on videos that are about me being trans, like not videos about Jehovah's Witness stuff. Let's see here. A scorpion without a tail is like a JW without Watchtower influence. You did fantastic, Asher. I gotta hit the sack for sleep myself. Alright, goodbye, Dave. Thanks for hanging out for so long, and thanks for watching the documentary, and thank you for having my back, too. I appreciate it, man. You have a good rest. Satan and Jehovah are fighting a giant sucking sound, with each other for your streaming connectivity. Okay, yeah. If you're ever in Southern California, let me know. I actually do plan on visiting California at some point, hopefully in the near future. I would really like to, because I have friends that I would like to visit out there. So I will, I'll hit you up. I'm not sure how I'll hit you up, though, because I don't have any contact information for you except for your YouTube channel. But yeah, feel free to contact me on Facebook. My Facebook page is linked in the description of this video. So if you want to hit me up there, so I can actually contact you, you're welcome to. Just let me know that you're the person that said that from here. But yeah, wow, I must have been on for a really long time. Let's see here. How long have I been on? Wow, almost 4 hours. Yeah, that's a pretty long stream. I'm really sorry. I don't know how I always end up doing such long streams, even when I mean to just be on for a little bit. I guess it's the ADHD. I have a tendency to ramble and jump around topics and stuff. But yeah, I'll probably be back on tomorrow to talk about more stuff if I'm feeling up to it. I've been really doing the grind this past week or so, trying to get people to be aware of the documentary, trying to get the word out and all that. And then when it came out, I was on the grind trying to help people watch it and stuff. So I haven't really had a ton of rest or anything, even though I just had surgery 2 weeks ago. But I'll try to cut myself a break this weekend, at least. And then, yep, I'm going to be back at it, because I still have more footage to put out from the memorials that I attended this year, and from the Bible studies that I did in the spring, and I have a lot of stuff to release. So I'll get back to that hopefully starting next week. I should give myself a little tiny break this weekend, because it's been a lot, and I should let myself process this stuff for a couple of days. But yeah, I might pop on tomorrow anyway, and just just before the weekend, and chat with y'all again during a decent hour of the day, not in the middle of the night and stuff. But anyway, I guess I'll just pop off here. I have a couple of messages I gotta go respond to, and then, maybe I'll have a little tiny snack, a light snack, and then hit the hay again, because I'm still wiped, even though I took a nap, and I could use the sleep. But thank you, everybody. Thank you so, so much for watching the documentary, for, supporting all the people in it. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being yourselves also. Thank you for leaving. Thank you for being yourselves. Thank you for living your best life. Just thank you. And I hope everybody is doing well, and I hope everybody continues to thrive. And if you have an inclination toward wanting to do, if you want to do some activism, then I support you as well, no matter what type of activism you're doing, because all activism is valid. Alrighty. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go do the stuff I said, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Or, well, I guess today, just later today. Like I said, if you still need help watching the documentary, private message me either on Discord, if you have my Discord, or private message me on the Facebook page that's linked in the description of this stream. And yeah, I'll see y'all around. Take care. Take care of yourselves and each other. Have a good night.